Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our attorney has sworn in the new members and the returning members. We would like to mention that we do have a new member, Jennifer Ragnow, who's sitting at the end over there as our first alternate, so we welcome her this evening. The first matter of business is the nomination and selection of a chairperson. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I nominate Michael Orsini.
I would second that.
Any further nominations? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We now have a nomination. Oh, Mike, you can run the meeting now.
Okay.
You're on.
I don't need to do anything.
Anyway, Happy New Year and thank you all once again. And it's an honor and a privilege to be chair. I'd like to nominate Cecile MacGyver for vice chair.
Second.
Move to close the nominations.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, as is the practice as per our bylaws, every year we go out for an RFP for attorneys. We got 2 responses. The board members have asked that we interview the one firm, Clark and Vignola. If you have any questions of our attorney before you make a decision, feel free to ask questions and interview him at this time, as he's sitting right next to Mike.
Anyone?
No questions.
Seeing none, I make a motion to nominate firm of Clark and Vignuolo as planning board.
Second the motion.
I will call the roll on that. Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Houck?
Yes.
Ms. MacGyver?
Yes.
Mr. Mettler?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Ragnow?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Welcome back for another fun year.
Jim,
Oh,
he now has to give us our witness oath so that we can actually testify for the year.
Exactly. If you guys could stand, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide during the course of calendar year 2016 at any planning board hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Thanks, guys. Just remember you remain under oath at subsequent meetings.
Now do the roll. Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Houck?
Yes.
Ms. MacGyver?
Here.
Mr. Mettler?
Here.
Mr. Onyaka? Mr. Pettit is excused. He still is out ill. Mr. Thomas?
Yes. Here.
Ms. Ragnow?
Here.
Mr. Almala? Chairman Orsini?
here. So we have the minutes from the executive session for adoption only.
Yes, until we out of litigation, our attorney recommends that we do not release them at this time, but we can adopt them since they were prepared.
So I make a motion for the adoption of those minutes from the executive session of December 16th, 2015.
Second the motion.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Houck?
Yes.
MacGyver?
Yes.
Mr. Mettler?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes. Okay, planning board calendar. Here is this.
Make a motion to remove July 6th. I feel that's a bad week to have a meeting since there are 2 other meetings scheduled for that month anyhow.
Is there a problem with that? I mean,
That's,
well, no, I'm just looking down the road. You don't have applications that far out, you don't know yet.
no, you want to remove that as a meeting because you don't think it's given the holiday? That's,
I mean, we could also remove August 3rd, because, I mean, traditionally, we don't have any August meetings either. And we do have July 20th and 27th, which could be, it's a workshop now, but it could always be a regular meeting if we needed it. Does that present any problems?
it's up to the board. If you want to remove the July 6th and the August 3rd meeting, that's fine, that's board's purview. Typically, we don't meet in August, so.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to adopt the calendar with the removal of July 6th and August 3rd.
Second the motion.
You could do that by affirmation if you want.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay.
We do have to adopt the,
Professional services
yeah,
agreement.
the resolution, so that authorizes
Right.
both you and Secretary to sign, so they can sign this evening.
Yeah, okay, so I make a motion to approve the resolution for professional services agreement for Clarkin and Vignulo. You can find that under the resolutions part in your packet if you don't know where that is.
I second the motion.
Councilman Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Hout,
Yes.
Ms. McIver,
Yes.
Mr. Mettler,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Ms. Ragnow,
Yes.
Chairman Orsini.
Yes. Okay, so housekeeping, 2 hearings tonight. Sluka, PLN 15-00018, carried to 1/20/16 without further notice. And PLN 15-00001, 745 Hamilton, carried to February 3rd, 2016, without further notice. So if anybody's here for those, they'll be heard respectively on the 20th of January and the 3rd of February. And you, though while they will be advertised, obviously, in the planning board agenda, they will not be advertised in the paper. So the one hearing we do have tonight is Onyx LLC, PLN 15-00015. Happy New Year, Peter.
And Happy New Year to you.
If I may, Mr. Orsini, before we start this matter, you carried 745 Hamilton to the February meeting. There was nobody here anyway. We're not going to be ready for February, so you might as well just carry it to the March meeting. It would be just as easy. So,
Vince, just make a note of that. I mean, yeah, that's fine.
Which meeting?
We need to carry it to a date certain.
yeah, we have to carry it to March, it's the 3rd, it's Wednesday,
Second.
March 2nd.
March 2nd, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Leap
so,
year.
so that 745 will be carried to March 2nd, 2016, without any further notice provided.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
We had a meeting with you last week, and we're not
Yep.
going to have the plans ready in time for February.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this is an application on behalf of Onyx LLC for property known as Block 507.15, Lot 201, on the tax map of the Township of Franklin. This is my 4th different application on this property. It's like an annuity.
It's Groundhog Day.
Just by way of history, there was an application in 2008 before this planning board under the name of Ambani Realty for basically the same application that's here this evening. The board approved the application. Thereafter, the owner of the property, who is not the current owner, entered into a contract to sell the property to a charter school. So we went to the zoning board for an application for the charter school, which was denied. And we went back to the zoning board, and it was approved. And then the charter school decided not to move there. So now we are, in essence, back with the almost identical application from 2008. And what I'd like to do, just so the board may have it for their records, I have a copy of the resolution. I don't know if the board was provided with a copy of the old resolution of approval, but I'd like to move that resolution as Exhibit A1.
Do you have enough copies for the whole board?
I don't have enough, I have 2 copies, which I can,
We'll share.
which we can share, I'll get one on each end. In addition, in order to move this matter along, there was a question concerning an open sewer bill. I have, for the record, a paid receipt, so that has been satisfied. I will ask that that be marked as A2. Actually, it's a fire hydrant bill. I'll give that to Mr. Vignolo.
Thanks so much.
And I would like to move also into evidences A3. There was a comment in the engineering report concerning obtaining Buckeye pipeline approval. For the record, I have here a submission that we made with respect to the original application in 2008, with an approval granted by Buckeye Pipeline in 2009 on the original application. We are going to advise them that we are now resurrecting this project. We will put them on notice, and actually part of the approval requires that they be notified and have an employee on site when any work is being done. But we will put them on notice again as a result of this application. For the record, nothing has changed in the area where the Buckeye Pipeline is located from this approval, from the old approval.
Just for the board's benefit, Peter, before we leave that issue, can you just provide an explanation of why you need that and what the difference is between what's allowed and what you're asking for in terms of distance from the pipeline for construction disturbance, et cetera? Just to,
This township has an ordinance that you cannot have a structure within, I think it's 200 feet of the pipeline. The existing building is already within, and I'll have the engineer give you the exact dimensions, is well within that distance from the pipeline. We are putting a small addition to the building, which gets us a little bit closer to the pipeline. I think when all said and done, we're going to be about 12 point some feet from the pipeline. I'll give the exact dimensions during the testimony. But the building already is in violation of the ordinance, and we're putting a little addition onto it, which will exacerbate that violation. That has already been reviewed by Buckeye Pipeline back in 2008.
Just real quick overall, what I believe may have happened, I believe the building came first, and then the township changed the ordinance after the Edison situation to impose that 100-foot setback requirement. So, as Pete said, that the building is currently non-compliant. The original application for Ambani had a similar slight enlargement in that area, as well as the application for the charter school that went before the zoning board. So this is, the board still has the authority whether to approve or not approve the variance, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of that history.
And as a matter of fact, Mr. Healy, the charter school had a fairly major expansion on the one end with the expansion for the gymnasium, which is not as significant as this application. This evening, I intend to call 3 witnesses. I intend to call the architect who prepared the architectural plans that were submitted in conjunction with this application, also the site engineer, and our traffic consultant. I will start by calling Mr. Mistry as my first witness.
Could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
If you could state your name, you could use that microphone, please. Thanks, Peter. If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give your professional address for the record.
Yogesh Mistry, last name is Mistry, 17 Main Street, Netcong, New Jersey.
All I really need to know is if you are licensed to practice in New Jersey,
Yes, I am.
and you're good.
Okay. Mr. Mistry, you are also the architect of record in the original application, were you not?
Yes, in the 2008 application, but not the charter school.
Right, in the original. Can you, well, you have some exhibits that you're going to rely on. Perhaps it's easier if we just mark the exhibits, and I think you have a
Yeah.
handout of those exhibits.
Yeah,
Let's mark
Oh.
those. I'm going to mark, Mr. Chairman, as A4,
Peter, if you could just add the date, which is 1/6/16, as well as the application number, which is PLN 15-00015. Thank you.
I'm going to mark as A4, basically the colored rendering of the buildings along with samples of the materials that will be used.
This is another colored rendering.
I will mark as A5, another colored rendering.
These are the plans that were submitted.
These are the floor plans. And I'm going to mark, if it's okay with you, Mr. Vignolo, as A6, the floor plans. There are, how many sheets?
4 sheets.
4 sheets, but I'll mark it as one exhibit.
That's
These are the
fine. And
plans
this was what was submitted to the board?
Correct.
Okay.
This is dated 12/3.
Okay. Thank you. 12/3/15?
12/3/2015.
Great.
Mr. Mystery, can you indicate to the board what's on the subject property at the present time as far as the structure and what the present condition of that structure is?
Yeah, the existing property at 785 New Brunswick is an old, it's an existing vacant warehouse building. It's a one-story masonry type building. It's kind of, the outside is nondescript. It's been there for some time. It's been vacant for some time. I think some of the vegetation has been overgrown. It's really, when I worked on the application originally, it was already vacant. I know they were looking for a few tenants, and nothing ever happened. And I think it's been vandalized a few times as well. So it's not in the best shape, and it definitely needs improvement. It faces the ShopRite Plaza and is also adjacent to another a strip mall, a retail plaza.
Okay. And can you indicate to the board what our plans are with respect to the building? I mentioned in my opening that we're going to use the building, but there are going to be some minor additions to it.
Correct. Just going to refer to A6 exhibit, and
If you could just indicate which page you're on.
I'm flipping to sheet A2.01 of A6. This is the proposed floor plan of the building. Essentially, we're keeping the main footprint of the building. It's approximately, the existing footprint is 53,882 square feet. We're putting 2 small bump outs at the 2 corners, front corners that face New Brunswick Road. And these are, one bump out is about 688 square feet, and there's another bump out on the other corner that's 849 square feet. There's also sort of a connecting exterior canopy, which we're not adding square footage to the building, but it's more of a cover for pedestrians, as well as just making the building a little more attractive. So essentially, we're keeping the building exactly as it is, except for those improvements. The inside of the building, it's kind of just one large warehouse. There is some existing, some walls in there, some existing construction that was there from the previous office tenant. But we're looking to sort of gut the inside. We're showing right now some tenant demising walls. We don't know who's going to come in. We're showing potentially, I think, about 9 tenants in here. Some tenants might be larger, some tenants might be smaller, and those interior walls could be realigned or adjusted to accommodate the potential tenants. Inside, the only thing we're really proposing is sort of this internal corridor. It's sort of a service corridor that allows all the tenants access to the loading dock. There is one tenant, Tenant J, up to the north, which doesn't have direct access to the service corridor, although there is an area where we could extend that service corridor if we needed to. But essentially,
Mr. Mystery, based on discussions we had with the owner of the property yesterday, we will extend that hallway so that the tenant J, as is shown on the plans, will have access to that corridor. Is that correct?
yes, we did discuss that, and to help improve access to the loading dock, as well as it's not depicted on my drawing, but it is depicted on the site drawing. There's a dumpster just adjacent to the 2 loading bays. So I know one of the comments that came back was that the dumpsters weren't in the best locations on the site. We did look at various possibilities for the dumpsters, and we felt this one location next to the loading dock was appropriate. there's a sort of another location further on the other end of the parking lot, which the site engineer could describe better. But we felt that the dumpster close to the loading dock was accessible to all the tenants through this kind of interior service corridor. You know, they could take their trash out discreetly and you know, through a covered interior space. So that helps to service all the tenants, and as well as for deliveries and just servicing of the tenant spaces.
Yeah.
And then really the other improvement to the building is the exterior. That's really the main focus of what we're doing.
All right, and can you refer back to the exhibit, I think it's A4, which has the exterior of the building, along with the finishes?
Yeah.
And the exterior of the building that we are proposing is slightly different than the building 7, 8 years ago, correct?
Yeah, that's really the major difference. The client that we're currently working for and proposed this building for, they just had a different take on their retail approach and what they wanted the building to look like. The original building that was designed in 2008, it sort of had these mansard type roofs. It's a little more traditional look. Our current client wants it a little more contemporary, a little cleaner look. You know, we kind of have these parapets and kind of variations in stone and brick and stucco and sort of glass and metal. Really, that's the look they showed me when we started this kind of redesign, and that's kind of what we ended up with. And this board A4 really depicts the general look of the front of the building that faces New Brunswick Road.
I think you mean Old New Brunswick Road.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's kind of this bypass, and now it's called Old New Brunswick.
Yes.
It kind of faces the ShopRite Plaza. But the rest of the building will have a similar character to it. You know, we kind of have these the reddish brick, kind of this grayish and brown stone, and then kind of these neutral or kind of earth tones for the stucco. And we have some awnings that are black fabric. And then kind of this pin-mounted signage, which I know that's another thing we have to discuss.
All right, why don't we jump to the signage now? You are proposing basically generic signing, obviously, because we have no tenants, but we are also showing various sizes of signage because of perhaps larger spaces. Is that correct?
Yes, I think the provisions in the town allow for 30 square feet per sign, and I think 3 feet for the maximum height of a sign. We are exceeding that on our signs. Some are 50 square feet, some are 63 square feet, and then there's some signs that go up to 4.5 feet. Not all of them, but there are some. We really looked at that. We went back and forth. We did talk to your planner, Mark Healy, and we did revise our drawings slightly to, you know, kind of make them more in conformance. And I think I felt, and I think your planner felt that, you know, what we have provided for and proposed is appropriate and in character to the building. We didn't want to, you know, go too crazy, but at the same time, we didn't want to go too small, and then every time a tenant moved in, they would have to come back and sort of ask for a variance or relief on signage. And we don't know. Some of these signs might never go up because, you know, if a tenant takes, you know, multiple spaces, they might only need one sign. So I think that what we're proposing is pin-mounted signage, and there's gooseneck lighting that will illuminate it from the exterior.
Can you explain to the board what pin-mounted signage is?
Pin-mounted signs are kind of what's depicted in this rendering. It's individual characters or letters that are mounted, you know, an inch or two off the wall, and they're kind of projected. Some of the signage could be backlit, meaning there's lights inside the channel letters and kind of create this halo effect, or they could be lit by the gooseneck lighting above.
Okay. Can you indicate to the board where the HVAC units will be kept for this building?
This is a flat roof building. It's a large footprint. It's sort of almost more square shaped than most strip malls. Most strip malls are sort of rectangular or linear, but this one's more square. The rooftop units will be will be placed on the roof. We did indicate on our drawings that, you know, we provide any screening to shield the rooftop units.
Okay, and also the parapets will also act as a shield or screen for
Correct.
the units, is
Yeah,
that correct?
the parapets, we're all within the height limits for the town, but they do extend a slightly higher than what the roof line is, so that would help to shield the rooftop units as well.
I have a question from that. Does that extend all the way around the building?
Yes.
The look?
So, because effectively, this is a two-frontage building. And I was also concerned what the treatment of the building is on the New Brunswick Road side. And those units should be as invisible on that side as they are on the front side.
Yeah.
On the old New Brunswick Road side.
Now, the treatment for the exterior as well as, parapet heights, they kind of go up and down and they vary, but it does continue around four sides. I mean, really, it's a four-sided building more than a two-sided because we do have potential tenant doors on every side, so we want it to be attractive. We want it to be in the same
I
character.
understand that. I'm just concerned that on the New Brunswick Road side, it doesn't look like a cement block warehouse because technically it's your rear of the building.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I just want to refer back to, I don't have a rendering of that side, but I do have an elevation.
And I think it should be, I'm assuming it's going to be made of the same materials.
Yes.
Because you kind of ran into a problem like that. Didn't you do Pierce Street? Where those retail shops that are on Pierce Street, but they're actually not on Pierce Street, they're facing in, and those people had to come back because they wanted signs put out on, rightfully wanted signs on Pierce Street, because that was basically another frontage. This, to me, is similar, except here you have Somerset Run across the street.
Yeah, it is, except this is one building, and as Mr. Mystery will point out, every side of the building will be identical to the side that you saw, and there's going to be entrances on every side of the building. So in reality, the building has four frontages. The shops on Pierce Street really had a front and a back.
I understand, it's just a comparison,
Yeah.
it is a dual, it has two frontage,
Right.
two street frontages.
Yeah, and the building, as Pete said, the building, and the architect will explain in a second, the building basically has really four retail frontages,
Yeah.
because they have stores on all four sides.
Good, I think that's better.
Yeah.
Just, I guess for the record, I think A5 is what's at the base of the tripod right now. Is that indicative of the treatment that'll happen on all sides of the structure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just going back, wanted to refer to sheet A4.01 of exhibit A6, I believe, A6. The proposed south elevation is, I guess, what you're referring to, the side that faces New Brunswick Road. And again, I mean, you can see on this board, A401, it shows all the four sides. We do have potential tenants on each side. It's because it's more of a square building, we got to sort of occupy, all the space. So we do have doors, we have entryways, but right now we have kind of three potential entryways on that side. So yes, we do want to have it the same character. There's the brick, there's some stone, and there's some stucco there, kind of, keep in character with what you saw on the original rendering.
I'm sure when we get to it, there probably will be concern about lighting on that side. There was before with signs on building shop entrances, but you can wait until that comes.
Okay. The signage that you talked about, just so we can get out in front of it, the signages that you talked about are all going to be the same. They're going to be above each and every tenant. They're all going to be gooseneck lighting with pin signage.
That's what we have proposed right now.
So that's all around the building. So if there's three tenants potentially on the New Brunswick Road side, there will be three signs on the New Brunswick Road side, all gooseneck lit signage, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Yeah, Ted.
Mr. Mystery, I looked at your floor plan and I said to myself, where are the bathrooms?
But we don't have any bathrooms. We don't expect people to use it. No, we, again, this is a speculative building in terms of the interior tenant spaces. When tenants move in or are planning to move in, they would occupy, let's say one tenant wants to take space A and B, they would fit out that space, they would provide for their own bathrooms. There's not common bathrooms. This is going to be, as most retail tenants would have their own facilities. So right now, there's nothing shown there because we don't know. It doesn't make sense to build bathrooms if, we don't know who's going to occupy these spaces.
But you can install bathrooms wherever?
Yes, yeah. I mean, there were bathrooms that, if you could see in tenant D and E, there were bathrooms there before. I think, I'm not sure if they're still there, but they might have demoed some of that area, but that's where the office space was, that's where there were toilets. As far as, plumbing lines and sewer lines, we'll have to make sure that, if we put bathrooms on this side, that they could tie into sewer lines.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were toilets on this side as well, in tenant J. I think this was like an old locker room or something like that, so there were showers and toilet rooms over there. There were also in tenant D and E, and I believe there's even toilets in tenant G, so there were, there's plumbing supported throughout the building.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there's nothing architectural that will make it difficult to put bathrooms for each tenant.
Yeah, we haven't done a survey of the elevation of the sewer line, but that could be done. If there's a space, for instance, that can't reach it, then we'd have to use an ejector pump and, pump it up and back down.
Yeah, well, it's not so much the height that's the problem. If there's a solid flooring with no provision for putting pipes under it, was what I was wondering about.
No, it is a concrete floor, but, provisions can be made by, cutting the slab and installing piping.
On Old New Brunswick Road, there is an elevated brick pathway, a pedestrian pathway that connects the ShopRite Shopping Center with the Panera Shopping Center across the street. Do you plan anything like that between Somerset Run and your shopping center that would facilitate pedestrians that want to come over from Somerset Run into your shopping center?
That would be the site engineer, and we could talk about if there's anything there when we get to the engineering comments.
Okay.
I also am remiss, because Mr. Mistry was kind enough to get a smaller version of A4, so I'll hand it out if you want to see the color samples.
We do. Makes my job easier. Mr. Lanford.
Mr. Mistry, you've had an opportunity to review the staff reports that were generated in conjunction with the application,
Yes.
and predominantly Mr. Healy's report. I believe through your testimony, we've addressed all of Mr. Healy's comments. If we've missed something, I'm sure Mr. Healy will point it out. We'll be happy to address it. But the bottom line is, if we haven't addressed it, we will comply with all of his comments. Is that correct?
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
So, trees and screening, and is that for your engineer, or are you
That's the
gonna-
engineer.
Okay, because that's part of Mr. Healy's report, too.
Yeah, but he had some,
Architectural,
Mr. Healy covers it all.
He answered my question.
I know there was one comment from Julio Vega, the board engineer, regarding the utility room. I just need to discuss with him what he wants in terms of the utility room, whether it's the size or we do show a water and utility room along tenant D. That's where the service is coming in, but I didn't understand the comment, but we'll make sure we address that and take care of that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you'll discuss that with the water department, or me.
Okay, even better.
No further questions.
Okay, does the board have any questions for this witness other than the ones already? Nope.
Mr.
Okay.
Dupont?
You could raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your professional address for the record.
John DuPont, DuPont, JPD Engineering, 756 Jackson Road in Stewartsville, New Jersey,
Licensed to practice in the state of New Jersey?
as an engineer and a planner.
Wonderful, you're accepted.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Dupont, in presenting your testimony, will you be relying on certain exhibits?
I will.
All right, perhaps we should mark those, and then we'll move on to your testimony. A7 would be a colored rendering of the site plan, is that correct, Mr. Dupont?
Correct. I do have a couple sheets. They're exactly what was submitted to the board, but they are different sheet numbers, front and back.
Okay, these are part of the plan set.
They are.
Okay, there are two boards, I'll mark them as A8, and then and he can refer to whatever sheet it is.
That's fine, and they're just the sheets from the plans that were submitted to the board. Yes, they were.
Great, thank you.
And also, Mr. Dupont has a colored rendering of the site plan, so I will pass that out at the appropriate time.
Those are just smaller copies of A7?
Correct.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Lanford.
Thanks.
Mr. Dupont, you prepared the site plan as the subject of this application.
That is correct.
Okay, and in preparing the site plan that we submitted in 2015, did you have the benefit of reviewing the previously approved site plan from 2008?
Yes, I did.
And so you're familiar with both the old application, the old plans, the old resolution of approval, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you just briefly, and I know the board has been through this quite a bit, but just briefly give the board the benefit of the existing conditions and zoning in that area?
Yeah, I'm sure most of the board is familiar with the site. It's about a 6.14 acre site located on Old New Brunswick Road. The site is currently occupied by a vacant laboratory and manufacturing building. The property is located in the M1 Light Manufacturing District and the Retail District Overlay Zone. As you were told in 2008, an application came before you very, very similar to this one for a renovation of this existing property. The site improvements we're going to talk about tonight are extremely consistent with that. Very, very, very similar, minor changes. So I think you're probably pretty familiar. And I can go through that if you'd like us to.
And why don't you go through what we are proposing, and as we go through what we are proposing, just point out the changes from 2008, if any.
Okay, basically from a site plan standpoint, pretty straightforward, as the architect has said. There's a couple of small additions to the building and a canopy along the front and the signage that we talked about. In addition to that, there's going to be, from a site plan again standpoint, no other changes to the building, no expansion except for that. Milling and repaving your parking lot, removing a portion of parking area that's there today, making some drainage improvements throughout the site. There's a significant amount of landscaping initially proposed in 2008 that is here again now, buffering the perimeter of the site. Specifically, the rear of the site was an area of discussion in 2008. There's a development across the way. They wanted to make sure it was screened properly. The screening is pretty detailed and pretty extensive. Lighting, LED lighting proposed throughout the site, new lighting with shields, being very conscious of no spillage onto neighboring properties or roadways. The circulation stays almost identical. However, we did make one change to a driveway. Circulation is a little better here. We have a full two-way circulation around the property. Enough spaces. We exceed your limit, your ordinance requirements. There are basically only 3 variances that we're looking to tonight. And if you would like me, I could touch on them from an engineering standpoint first. Pretty basic. There's an existing pipeline that goes through the property. As you guys know, the building's existing, that pipeline is existing, and then a new ordinance was put into place from your town about a 100-foot buffer. No building, no construction, no structure within 100 foot of a pipeline. This existing building, before any additions, is 25 feet from that pipeline, outside of the easement. The proposed addition in the front corner is going to get 10 feet closer, so still 15 feet away from the pipeline, still outside the easement. But that is one source of relief we're asking for tonight.
Before you go further, that information was provided to Buckeye Pipeline in 2008, and that same addition was on the plans in 2008, and Buckeye Pipeline did not object to that expansion. Is that correct?
That is correct. Actually, they gave us an approval letter, and they have some conditions, but they gave us an approval letter.
About the pipeline.
Yes.
How are you going to be sure that your digging and your construction is not going to jar or cause any kind of friction or movement on
Understood.
that pipeline at all?
That's a great question. Buckeye Pipeline, very sensitive to that, as we all are. Buckeye Pipeline, in their approval, they dug test pits to identify exactly the depth of their line. They know the zone of influence and how close we can be to that line. And they've required us to have a Buckeye Pipeline representative on site during construction. So they're going to be monitoring their line as we're near their line. There's not going to be any construction going on near there without them present. And they're really, obviously that's their business. They understand that zone of influence, and they're going to protect that line. Two other areas of relief that are required. One, there's a freestanding sign out front. Your freestanding sign ordinance allows 100 square feet for messages. And our freestanding sign, I have an exhibit, if you'd like to pass out, we can do it. It was on the site plan as well, but you can see it. The messaging section portion of the sign is 100 square feet, meets your ordinance. However, you've seen the architectural plans, the building's going to look terrific. The sign has decorative masonry around it. So the decorative masonry around this message portion causes a variance. We have 289 square feet of signage total, so we need relief for that.
I'm going to mark that as A9 and pass that out to the board members.
And again, this sign is designed large enough for all the tenants that we have proposed. It's very attractive, and I think you'll be very happy with it.
But the portion of the sign, just to be clear, the portion of the sign that's conveying the message, so where you have the different tenants,
Right.
that area is no more than 100 square feet?
It is 100 square feet, exactly. Some more.
But our ordinance considers the entire sign, not only, right? So that's always a point of clarification.
And there is one other area of relief that we're going to be requesting tonight. The attached signs. The architect, again, reviewed that. around the perimeter of all four sides of the buildings. For the future tenants, they're proposing signage a little larger than your ordinance. Franklin has a 30 square foot maximum or 3 foot high sign regulation. There are 7 signs that are going to be 50 square feet. And this is approximate. I think the architect says he built in some flexibility for the tenants. So 50 square foot with a 4.5 foot height, a little larger. And there are 4 signs that are proposed at 63 square feet. A little bigger, but I think appropriate with the face of the building. I think the rendering looks terrific, so I think that's pretty appropriate. But that's the 3 areas of relief we need.
Okay. You've identified them, and in your opinion, as a professional planner, can the variances be granted for those 3 areas of relief without any substantial detriment to the zone scheme or zone plan?
Absolutely. The pipeline, real quickly, the pipeline building was existing, the pipeline location existing, created a hardship for this applicant. Dealing with Buckeye Pipeline, getting the proper approvals, doesn't impact, I don't think, no detrimental impact to any surrounding properties. And I think that you can grant that variance. The signage go to a flexible C2. There are, this is going to help the safety, the circulation, the visibility. It's going to help the site. This site, is run down and vacant. This is an opportunity to renovate the site and bring it back to life. All the properties surrounding are in such terrific shape, and the area looks really good. This is going to be another one of those pieces. So I think, yes, you can certainly, there's no detriments. I don't think there's any detriment. And, so there's nothing to outweigh. I mean, it's only benefit here in this application.
Thank you. Can you touch briefly on the parking, can you give the board the parking numbers, the parking counts?
We did eliminate some asphalt, but we still exceed your ordinance. We're proposing 279 spaces, which includes 28 bank spaces along the western property line. It's a banked area. We don't need those, and we exceed. But that parking lot gets milled, repaved, restriped, and we far exceed anything we need.
Okay. And for the benefit of the board and the members of the public, can you indicate where the light structures are around the building? I'm not talking about on the building, the light stanchions.
Yep, there are lighting. You can see on your site plan, there is lighting. On the color rendering, a little tougher to see. But there's lighting around the perimeter of the property and as well as in the interior of the parking spaces. Downward facing lighting, shielded. We have a lighting plan submitted. No spillage to neighboring properties, no glare issues. Current, LED lighting, so I think it'll be high quality.
Okay. Stormwater management, how's that being handled?
Stormwater management, very similar to your 2008 plan. Going to be collecting water on-site, new storm sewer system into a on-site detention basin that deals with recharge and quality and quantity. It outlets to the ditch out front of the property. Meet all the criteria. Your engineer did have a comment about getting more geotechnical data. We will be doing that. We can certainly comply with the comments in his review letter, but we're going to be outletting to the existing ditch. We need DEP approval. We've already submitted for that, waiting for answers back, but we feel confident that we meet all the state standards.
Okay.
Is that a dry basin? I mean, for the most part?
Yes, it is. Exactly right.
And you show landscaping on your rendering inside the basin, which I commend. Is that feasible in today's day and age?
It is. If you pick the proper species, which I think we have here, yes, it is.
Okay.
Because sometimes materials are such, or there's a structure underneath that prevents planting, and so I just wanted to make sure because things changed a lot, I think, with stormwater in the last 10 years or so.
They certainly have changed a lot. Yeah, these are nothing below that for structure, natural ground, and we like the wet areas.
You did mention the sensitivity towards landscaping, both in the old application and the new application. Can you spend just a few moments reviewing the landscaping? I don't need you to go into every specific tree, but exactly what you're proposing for landscaping around it. Mr. Orsini would like to know about every specific tree.
I was just commenting to Pete here. There would have been a time when that might have intrigued me. But, with age, I might have mellowed a little bit,
So we can
Just
give
the
you...
genus and species now. I insist on genus and species.
Maybe your memory is failing you and you don't recognize the species.
Well, as I'm sure that you're familiar with, the perimeter of the property was initially heavily buffered, heavily screened, and in 2008, it became an issue of a property across the rear, that the screening wasn't quite enough. It was going to be a little obtrusive. So the application 2008, as a condition, proposed off-site buffering. That's still in the application today. So I think it's South Run, I think it is?
Somerset
Run is across the way, so there's still proposed buffering outside. We're still working with that group as well to make sure that they have input. The entire perimeter, even the basin, as the chairman said, even the basin gets screened around the perimeter. We have a couple plants inside. The front of the building too. It's going to be just a beautiful building.
Now,
Can you put in a raised pedestrian pathway for the pedestrians in Somerset Run to walk over there?
Well, I heard your comment before, and we checked, and New Brunswick Road is a county road. So then we look to see if there anything can be done at a crosswalk or anything, and it really can't be. I mean, the county can decide.
New
but
Brunswick's not a county road, sorry.
New Brunswick's not a county road?
Over here. New Brunswick Road is not a county road.
Oh, okay. I thought New Brunswick Road was. Okay, but I don't think a crosswalk is gonna meet the merits of a crosswalk here. Site distances. So I'm afraid that people are gonna have to probably get themselves to the traffic signal, lower down. I don't think at grade walkway would work. I don't think that would be safe. So that's where we are.
Here's the thing, though, people do it anyway at this point, so the idea is possibly to make it safer. And it's different than it was 10 or 12 years ago, because there is a pretty extensive developing network of pedestrian walkways around there. And it only would take a few tweaks to start making some significant connections. And that kind of a crossing, the issues I remember with that crossing 7 or 8 years ago was the fact that someone would have to decide who's going to cut through the guardrail in order to make a break on the other side of the street so that people could get through.
Understood.
I think,
Can you outline where there are proposed sidewalks in relation to your project?
The proposed sidewalks are along the front of the building, along the front of the property, from the old and New Brunswick Road intersection back across the front of the property, tying into the sidewalk which currently exists today.
and then
Okay,
it connects into the site as well.
Yes, the site and then the perimeter of the site. Right, so right across the front, yep.
Yeah, I think it's an important issue. I think it's really not, the decision really isn't the applicant's to make. I think if the planning board would like to encourage a connection to Somerset Run, I think we're going to have to talk to engineering and traffic safety to discuss whether a mid-block crosswalk in that area is a safe thing to do, considering the horizontal and vertical curves and the speed of the roadway. I think that might be a little bit beyond. I think the applicant's obligation here is to provide sidewalks along their own frontage, connecting to the existing sidewalk network, connecting having sidewalks and crosswalks within their own development that connect to that sidewalk. Perhaps if the board has an interest in encouraging the township to do something with New Brunswick Road, you might want to, perhaps say that, but I just don't know if I think it's a little bit beyond the applicant to do that.
But then there is another issue that is much more direct to that. I think somehow you need to find a way to do the raised brick crossing on your frontage somewhere to make a connection to the Somerset Woods facility across the street. That's one thing, because I'm assuming that of a couple of hundred employees that are going to be there, some of them might want to walk across the street to use your facility. The other part of it is that entire, I'm going to use the word street, but it's a misnomer, from New Brunswick Road intersection all the way through those developments to Elizabeth Avenue, that's technically a driveway. It's not a street.
that's not 100% correct.
It may not be 100% correct, but in use, in reality, when your facility is operating and the nursing facility is, It's effectively becoming that. and-
That is still
Do it, Bob.
a municipal road.
Here, so people cross and
That is still, Old New Brunswick Road,
But the part that starts at ShopRite is their.
the part that starts at ShopRite and is between the ShopRite and the other shopping center belongs to that shopping center. That is not a public road. And as part of that application, the planning board, I think it was, that was the zoning board that started that application, required us to have some raised platforms in the road there on a private road. If you, and I'm going to steal some of his thunder because I've been speaking to Mr. Linus, who represented the nursing home. As you are aware, the nursing home widened part of New Brunswick Road as part of their application. We are going to do the milling and paving as part of this application. I am not so sure that, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Hack, but I don't know if the municipality would want raised sidewalks on municipal roads. I think that's probably not something that they would want.
Well, wait a minute, I don't understand something. How is it that, Old New Brunswick Road by the ShopRite is not a municipal road, and then all of a sudden you get down to your area and it is a municipal road? I don't.
It used to be a municipal road, and the municipality vacated it when the ShopRite and the other shopping center were built to make it basically one shopping center, as opposed to two shopping centers divided by a
But
public
the
road.
portion in front of this application has not been vacated, is that what you're saying?
That, it is not, that is a municipal road.
Because we were only dealing with what applications were being heard at the time. Now, we can talk back and forth about what exactly everything is. The reality is, we are encouraging pedestrians to make use of getting back and forth to all of these places. And I think the right thing to do is to find a way to be able to keep encouraging that safely. Maybe the town, and maybe it can't be part of this tonight, has to consider vacating the rest of it, so that that is a driveway to the whole complex, because it's not just a highway anymore.
The problem with that, Mr. Thomas, I could tell you, it was easy with the ShopRite site because the same owner owned both sides. On this side, this remaining portion, you have this applicant, you have the nursing home, and you have hers. So there's three property owners, two on one side, one on the other. If the town were to vacate the road, half of it would go to one side, half of it would go to the other. Then who maintains it, who snow plows it? I think you'd be creating more of a problem than you're solving.
Well, then what's going to happen that's going to make this street safer when you're done, so that the people who you know are going to be crossing back and forth, do it?
Well,
You're going to have curbs?
there's curbs there will be curbs on both sides. The curbs are already in on the nursing home side. There will be curbing on our side. There will be sidewalks on our side. That road will be milled and paved. I assume that if somebody feels there is a need for a crosswalk, not a raised crosswalk, one can be placed along that strip of road. But I don't think the township would want us to have a raised another
Okay,
raised crosswalk.
Even if it's not raised, then that, to me, the problem remains it may not be the ideal solution when it's done, but the bigger problem remains how to get people across New Brunswick Road into this development through the guardrail.
Mr. Chairman?
Bob?
I would be very nervous about that, because even when you pull out of Old New Brunswick Road, you have left and right and left and right and left and right. Where you would be crossing, you would have not only the traffic on New Brunswick Road, which tends to go a little faster than it ought to, but you'd have cars turning in and out of Old New Brunswick Road, which complicates the question, so that you would have to look if you were pulling out of Old New Brunswick Road, you would have to look not only for cars, but for potential pedestrians in a crosswalk, which makes a somewhat difficult situation even worse. And my fear is by putting a crosswalk in an area where the sight lines are not good because you have curves on both sides and hills, you would be encouraging something that probably shouldn't happen. It would be nice if people could walk from Somerset Run to these shopping centers, but I don't want to encourage people to do something that is potentially dangerous to their existence.
Well, the other option would be to take this township sidewalk fund and build a sidewalk on the nursing home side of New Brunswick Road up to the corner of Davidson, which there would be there, because then you have the light and the crosswalk and everything else. There probably would be a sidewalk there, because I think there's an approval for a commercial project on that corner that requires it, but was never built.
Yeah, I think that's a much safer design than trying to encourage people to walk across New Brunswick, going down the other side, crossing at the Davidson, New Brunswick intersection, and going down the south side. I think is but again, I think that's somewhat outside the scope of this development. As far as Old New Brunswick Road, I do understand the very real possibility that people going to the skilled nursing facility across the street may want to go to the stores. I think that's something that the board may want to, ask that staff meet with the applicant and see if there's some design that might work. I'm not quite as concerned about people crossing Old New Brunswick Road as I am New Brunswick Road. Just the speeds are just very different.
But when it comes to Somerset Run, I mean, physically, you have to cross New Brunswick Road, and you may, as you, the engineer inferred there, will have to do it at the light at Davidson. Now, I think there's probably the ideal solution, and I agree with what Bob Medler said, that that's probably a poor place at this juncture. If it were a signalized intersection, different story. And one day it probably will be, but it's not now. But I do agree with Bob Thomas that anything we can do to encourage mobility in the area, and the fact that people will, employees from the nursing home will come over to this site, and people from Somerset Run, most of whom actually are perfectly capable of walking that amount of distance, and will come up and from Somerset Run cross and come up on some way to eventually cross into the center. We should have something that's striped to do that on Old New Brunswick Road, I think. That would be the best compromise I could see at this point in time without a signalized intersection there. Because without a signalized intersection, I think that you would be taking your life in your hands.
We can try to locate an appropriate point for a crosswalk on Old New Brunswick Road, somewhere from where the nursing home is and our facility. I don't want to guess as to where exactly it would go today, but we'll take a look at it, and we'll meet with the Township Engineering Department and try to figure out the appropriate location, and we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is illustrative of the whole development process of sort of, you get the developers of certain parcels to do sidewalks up to their property line, and then another one, and then maybe there's a gap. And nobody takes sort of a holistic look at the whole property. What really should be done probably is vacate that entire street somehow to ultimately make it what it is, which is sort of a retail and residential plaza that's, a very low speed traffic, that people are really only going there to go to the shops and wherever they're going. But, that unfortunately in municipal land use is not what happens, and you wind up, trying to solve big problems when they're big and not when they're little.
Well,
Anyway, I'll get down off my soapbox.
okay, Mr. Chairman, my only comment about that is that Hers Potato Chips has been here in Franklin for a long, long time, and is an old and good, rateable, and employer. And I don't want to do things to discourage industrial, commercial development in the township for reasons of ratables. And it's a good rateable, and has been, and they've been a good neighbor to the township. And to vacate the road in front of them is not a very friendly thing to do.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand that. You know, and obviously it won't be done, but I don't think. But I mean, in the best of all possible worlds, you would have, you know, sort of a pedestrian retail plaza where that street's only used, and maybe hers could, you know, design another entrance. I have no idea, but you know, it is what it is at this point.
There, years ago, the people from ShopRite were talking to hers about relocating them somewhere else in town. Who knows, with all this development around, maybe they don't want to be here, but someplace else, because this now has been a retail rather than an industrial area. So, I mean, you know, things constantly change. So, I mean, I think the board can only do what they can do based on what's before them
Right.
today. And, you know, if something happens with hers, maybe then, you know, the board gets another look at it. But I know that there's been discussions in the past trying to relocate hers somewhere else in town.
Yeah.
And it may happen.
Yeah, I think the most pragmatic solution for right now would be to try to stripe something to handle the inevitable fact that people from probably hers and probably the nursing home will come to this facility for that kind of thing, and people from Somerset Run will find a way to walk after they cross at the signalized intersection. You know, like I said, one day when this intersection is signalized, and it'll happen because traffic volumes will only grow, then it'll get signalized and striped, and we won't even be having this discussion. So, thank you for agreeing to do that.
Okay.
Look into that part.
Mr. DuPont, in order to move this thing along now, you've had an opportunity to review all of the staff reports that were generated in conjunction with this application,
I have.
including the engineering, just for the record. We have an engineering report, we have a planning report, we have the police department report, the fire official, and the health department. You've reviewed them all?
Yes, I have.
All right, and can we comply with and make the appropriate changes requested by all of the staff members to the plans?
Yes, we can.
And will any of those changes that would be made to the plans in any way materially affect what the board is looking at this evening?
No.
Okay, and with the issue, just again specifically with respect to the dumpster question that was raised by Patty Elliott, by putting an internal circulation to the dumpster, I think we've addressed her concern so that we have a main dumpster and then a secondary dumpster. Can you point out to the board where the second dumpster is?
Second dumpster's in the back of the property.
Okay, and that will also be screened and,
Yes, both of them. Yep, both dumpsters screened and with the corridor, perfect location.
okay. Thank you, I have no further questions.
Okay. You have anybody else?
Traffic.
Oh, well, sorry, before we go there, does anybody else have any questions for this witness? Ted, Chase, and Carl, you two? Okay, Ted first, then Carl.
Trees. Well, for one thing, of course, I was shocked to receive plans that showed a lot of trees that were no longer there. It was as if you'd constructed the plans without going to the site, but I suppose the reality is that you were just reusing old plans.
And I know a lot of trees were taken down since that. Yeah, there were a lot of trees taken down since that plan was prepared.
Yeah, and the two things, a lot of them were taken down because at the town's request, because the site was a mess and the applicant was willing to clean it up, and they asked if they could take some of the other ones down that were going to be removed anyway, and because the applicant was willing to do something above what the town required, we allowed them to do that.
Does it change the tree replacement calculations in any way?
No.
Actually, I think it does by a couple of trees, and we're going to adjust, it's like 2 or 3 trees are
Yeah.
going to change. It's
Well,
de minimis.
If you took out anything, you know, maybe add some to your buffer or put some in the detention
I
basin
think
or
we've
something?
done. I think it's-
Which we've done. I think we took out 2 trees that we were going to remain, and we've added them back in.
Okay.
Yeah, you propose taking out trees number 144 and 145, saying that they're in the site triangle. But that's site from where to where?
I'm sure you're talking about near the intersection, correct?
Between the development and the intersection with New Brunswick Road.
So what numbers were they again?
144 and 145, they're at the lower left-hand corner there.
So, yeah, they're in the site triangle for the intersection of Old New Brunswick and New New Brunswick. Or New
So
Brunswick
who
Road.
calls for them to be taken out?
They're in a site triangle, so we propose to remove them.
A site triangle from where to where?
From that intersection with New New Brunswick Road and Old New Brunswick Road. And the site triangle is actually shown on that.
But why,
Well, visibility from our driveway and that intersection is critical. So that, and we are relatively close, so that when you look at those two driveways, that is the site triangle. That area should have nothing over 3 feet tall. So those two would have to come out.
but the traffic, if you're coming out of the driveway, the traffic you're concerned with is traffic coming from the left, not the traffic coming from the right around that curve. And presumably, traffic leaving your driveway is generally not going to go to the left unless they're just going to the ShopRite.
Well, actually, it goes from that stop bar, you'd look in both directions. So that's a standard site triangle.
Are those trees out?
No,
They're not out yet.
They're not out yet. Okay. So I just want to make sure it's a relative discussion to have, because if they're out,
Those two are not out
we
yet.
have a different discussion.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you could take out the stuff that's up to 5 or 6 feet high, the bush honeysuckle, and you can see past the existing trees.
Well, don't forget, too, that is a heavily, wooded area. There's a lot of plantings there, and we are buffering even more the basin, so we're adding plantings to that area. So if I could buffer a little
No,
deeper
you're
in the
not
site-
adding in that area.
Actually, we are adding in that area.
No, unless your description of the area is pretty broad.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. We're closer to the basin in that area. But if those two trees being in that location,
Well, I think we should consult with Sergeant Hagman about whether
Yeah, I was
that's
gonna
really
suggest-
necessary.
I was going to suggest the same thing. Ultimately, we understand the desire to, those are two large trees. But if traffic safety determines that they need to be removed for sight distance purposes, then they do have to be removed.
Yeah.
So I would say, if the, condition it upon the applicant meeting with traffic safety and making that determination.
And if they are large, mature trees, and all you have is the trunk, then Ted might be right in that if you just clear the scrub, then you're going to be able to see.
May I make a suggestion?
Yeah, sure.
Why don't we leave them there till after we build the driveway, clear everything else out, and then take a look at it and see if it makes sense for them to stay or go at that time?
Fine, yeah.
I would put the caveat on that we want the engineer and our police to be okay with that, because they may say that they absolutely cannot be in, and if they
Yeah.
say that,
We have no problem removing it.
yeah,
Well, I would certainly defer to their opinion.
Right.
But I'd like to get their opinion.
right.
As to whether it's necessary.
Yep.
Trees 138, 139, and 140, you're proposing to remove, although they're in an area that's not being disturbed. They're just above, that is, to the south of the detention basin.
Okay. Quite frankly, it's probably because of the, that's it. Yeah, we could certainly try to keep those in place as well, but there's concrete curbing going there, so if we damage the roots and that tree dies, that's probably, we took them out, approximately.
No. I'd rather try to save them. And the tree I'd really like to save is 105, but I know you can't. That's the great big maple that's behind the little house. But,
Yep.
Yeah, that's.
Correct.
And Now, why do you propose having a berm along the front with rather heavy planting? The front meaning the old New Brunswick Road frontage.
Yeah, if I could just speak to that briefly, just so the board understands what the direction that the applicant was given when they met with staff originally, which was the planning board has already reviewed and approved the plans for Ambani, including all the plants, the trees we talked about on Somerset Run. They were basically given the direction that, basically leave it as it is. The board already approved it. They already approved the numbers, the size, the location of the plantings. So, except unless there's some particular reason, don't change anything. Board's already approved it, give the board what they've already approved. So that, so with that said, I think that design was what was in the plans for Ambani. That doesn't mean they have to stay that way, but that's why it's on the plan.
Well, also because the headlights and the cars won't be going into the nursing home windows.
Yeah, I mean, at the
With
time,
the
the nursing
berm
home
and
wasn't there, so the
shrubbery
board didn't
there.
have that foresight, but that was the design on those original plans. But if the board feels for that reason, it should stay, but that, I just want to get.
Well, I just comment, when I went and looked at the site, and I felt that where you have the channel to the east of your more easterly driveway, it would be a great place to have a grassy swale to carry water along the front of your property, and then you would have to have a culvert under your easterly driveway that would then drain into that channel. And as it is now, in fact, I think that Old New Brunswick Road probably drains onto your property. Of course, if you put curbs there, it won't, but it's got to, the question is, how is it going to get eventually to that channel? The other point being, I would think that your tenants would like more visibility from Old New Brunswick Road, but really my point was we don't often have a chance to get what are, I think, referred to as non-structural practices to deal with drainage, and in fact, you run across grass, it absorbs some of the pollutants from the what was on the roadway. It's a desirable thing to have when you can, and there'll probably still be room for some dense bushes on, but not high bushes, above headlights, but below storefronts on the side towards the parking lot.
I understand what you're saying about the grass swales and non-structural treatments. This is a site that is designed, the berm softens that and creates that buffer up front, which is desirable. It does block the car lights. The property is drained, the parking lot is drained to inlets, the water's being collected properly. There really isn't enough length there to get any value out of a swale, and it would totally change the front design of the building. I understand what you're saying. This is a, it did start off this way in '08. We didn't modify the drainage pattern, but it does work, and it works well. And I think it's probably the best design you could see right there.
Well, I just wanted to bring up the possibility.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. I mean, I'm fine with the berm and the landscaping as you show it. I mean, Ted makes a good point about visibility, but if you think that works, then, hey, it's fairly heavily landscaped, so. Carl. Oh, by the way, now you see why I don't have to ask the tree questions anymore. Carl.
Couple questions, some design comments. Your freestanding sign,
Yep.
You're going to have to either relocate the sign or relocate the water main, which will be under it, water service.
Okay.
You're going to need
Yeah.
at least 5 feet for
Understood.
a sign this freestanding size. It's not something small. Should anything happen to that, you're going to have to take the whole sign down.
Agreed.
The engineer had a comment, number 5, regarding the structures in the gas pipeline easements. The top of your loading dock area, there's 2 manholes that you're proposing. I don't know if you have any comments on that. I know you say Buckeye approved the plans. The engineer's asking for them the structures to be relocated. No permanent, he mentions no permanent structures, or they should be removed from the gas pipeline easement.
Where are the 2? I do see them.
Right at the top of the loading
I
dock.
see them by the crosswalks.
Which
Yeah,
one is-
those are both over the
Num-
existing, they're actually existing storm sewer pipes right there. That's just converting existing structures, so that's why they're staying there.
So they are gonna
They're
stay?
gonna stay, yeah.
Okay.
But again, we don't have to dig or anything there.
Still the same.
The sidewalk along Old New Brunswick Road from your easterly driveway down to New Brunswick, the sidewalk area falls within the wetlands or wetlands transition area. Was that included as part of your permit to the DEP?
Yes.
Very good. Clarification for Mr. Lantford. It will be a 2-inch mill and pave full width from the Hers driveway all the way down to New Brunswick Road?
Is that the burden you imposed upon us 8 years ago? It was the same burden you imposed?
It was shared with the nursing, Franklin Nursing.
Well, That's
They
not,
did the widening and, yeah.
yeah. That was all on the plan. Yes, it's the same that was there before.
Okay, this was shared last time. This applicant is going to do the full width mill and pave, or is it going to be shared? I want to make sure that it's addressed on the plans.
Unfortunately, the plans for the nursing home, and I don't want to get into whatever happened with the nursing home, had on it that the milling and paving to be done by others. So the nursing home was not obligated to mill and pave their side. They were obligated to widen their side and put curbing on
And-
their side.
And the charter school at that time.
And the original plans
Correct.
required us to mill and pave both sides, so we are milling and paving both sides, which is what I said earlier.
Okay, what I would like to see, and you could do with the engineer, is a separate section showing that hatched area on the plans, so it's picked up for the bonding,
Okay.
okay? Because I don't want the town to have to pay for the paving. One other question, this may go to your engineer or Ms. Dolan. Regarding the western driveway, the engineer notes that it should be realigned and shifted. You're calling out for a no left turn. Based on her testimony, if it's a no left turn, then maybe the striping should be a right turn with an only in the parking lot?
We'll wait for
Ms.
Ms.
Dolan?
yeah.
Okay. And fire hydrants, you have one all the way, I know you're probably going to have to meet with Mr. House.
John has a note that we have to meet with them, so they may be relocated.
You can't have a car in front of a fire hydrant.
Yeah. We'll-
in
we'll-
there. So you'll deal with them, put them in islands, or whatever you have to do, adjust the parking to,
We are overparked, so if we have to lose a parking space, we can do it. If we have to move the hydrant, we can do it, but we'll sit down with John and work that out.
very good.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay, let's go to traffic.
Do you swear the testimony you're going to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address for the record.
Elizabeth Dolan, D-O-L-A-N, Dolan and Dean Consulting, 792 Chimney Rock Road, Martinsville, New Jersey.
As Ms. Dolan has appeared before this board a lot,
My license
no
is still in good
introduction.
standing.
yes.
There we go.
Ms. Dolan, you actually did the original traffic counts for this project. You also did traffic reports for the ShopRite and the commercial spaces across from ShopRite, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Can you, and can you indicate to the board the impact of this project and the trip generations from this project and the impact it will have on the local roads, primarily the New Brunswick Road intersection and on Old New Brunswick Road itself?
Sure. The Ambani application was for retail at this location, very similar application. And at that time, Somerset Elizabeth II next door was not yet constructed at all. And we had the shop right across the street, and the county had required that we combine the impacts of all three parcels specifically for designing the traffic signal at Old New Brunswick and Elizabeth. So the numbers have been studied before, been approved here and by the county. The one thing that's a little bit different now is that we do have the nursing home across the street. Our updated traffic study includes that. It includes the remaining build-out from the shopping center next door. And it also looks a little bit differently at the site traffic distribution, because what we've seen over time through the traffic counts, there's a little more traffic going to the unsignalized intersection than had been originally projected. So our updated study does take that into account. Certainly, there is more than ample capacity at the traffic signal, and someone said earlier, in time, the Old New Brunswick and New Brunswick intersection may require signalization. That intersection primarily accommodates left turn movements from Old New Brunswick onto New Brunswick. We're creeping up towards 200 left turns in an hour, but there's hardly anybody turning right onto New Brunswick. So the analysis shows for the evening peak hour a level of service E and F at that location in the future, with or without this development. But as I said, there's available capacity at the traffic signal. In the future, will it warrant a traffic signal? I don't know. It's an interesting combination of traffic volumes, but we certainly may be getting there, not as a result of this particular application. So the impact analysis is consistent with the prior studies, with a little bit more orientation towards that intersection. And while we calculate these lower levels of service, the condition, it really isn't that case when we go out and observe, because the queuing during the evening peak hour is only averaging about 4 cars. The calculations would indicate that there's much more queuing and delay than is actually occurring. So in addition to that, we looked at the driveways. Those levels of service are in the B and C range, certainly very easy to make left turn and right turn movements into and out of these driveways, and that's primarily because of the somewhat low volumes on Old New Brunswick Road. So from an impact perspective, it's been studied, we've studied it again. There's really an impact that is being absorbed through the improvements that have been talked about through time, and most notably the signalized intersection at Elizabeth Avenue. As to the 2 driveways, I know there was a comment about possibly shifting the one driveway. I believe that the site plan that's before you is an appropriate access and circulation system, because that western driveway is aligning with the drive aisle around the building. It's a much more comfortable design than trying to introduce a driveway in the middle of the property where we're trying to use an existing building with a somewhat limited setback. You really wouldn't provide any additional queuing or any benefits by moving that driveway, so I think that it's appropriate to remain in that location.
Did you, and you heard Mr. Haas comment, did you examine that location in relationship to the Hers driveway and the offset to the Hers driveway?
We did. We counted that driveway, and we found a maximum of 33 vehicles leaving that driveway, making a left, again, towards the unsignalized intersection, which really isn't that high. I think between the visibility, the required site triangles, and the combination of volumes, you could probably allow the left turn to be made out of our western driveway. If it's the type of thing that, similar to the trees and the sight line, if we wanted to look at it later, I think that the combination of somewhat low volumes on Old New Brunswick Road, the somewhat low left turn volumes out of that driveway across the street, plus our volumes, in addition to the fact that you've got those stop signs, which slow traffic down a little bit, that left can probably be processed. But in the event that this board felt it was appropriate not to have that movement, the left out at the western driveway, I did reanalyze with everything at one driveway and found level of service movements out of the driveway that are, again, C and B. So certainly that can be accommodated. But based on the combination of volumes, we may not need to prohibit it. Certainly there's ample visibility and capacity to accommodate it.
Did you also analyze the on-site parking?
Yes, and there were some typos in my report, but we do comply with the requirement, which is 246. I counted up 249 proposed spaces on this plan. We do have the ability to then add 28 more. I don't believe that that would be necessary, and certainly your ordinance requirement is a little higher than the industry standard. So I believe it's a comfortable parking supply without the banked 28 spaces.
In addition, we may wind up losing 1 or 2 spaces if we have to relocate a fire hydrant, and actually, with the police comments, we may lose a space or 2. Assuming, worst-case scenario, we lose 4 or 5 spaces, would your opinion as to the adequacy of the parking spaces change?
If we can lose 3 right now and still comply with your ordinance, again, without those bank spaces, and between maybe adding a handicap space, which was one of the review comments, or islands, or as was just talked about, the fire hydrants, we're going to be very close to 246. If it's 1 or 2 spaces, again, I don't feel that that's going to have any negative impact. There'd still be ample parking on the property.
So do you want to bank these 28 spaces or not bank them?
No, we want to bank them. We don't think we need them.
Okay. I was just trying to clarify whether you wanted to take them out altogether, or you wanted to put them in, or you wanted to still keep them banked. So you still want to keep them banked?
It's probably, in a commercial setting, I think you want to keep them banked, just in case. Because if we take them out completely and then there's a need, then we have to come
Right.
back.
Well, I'm always very pro-banking. I'd rather you not add impervious coverage,
Right.
despite whatever our ordinance might say. If you say the site doesn't need that many spaces, I'd rather have you bank them and then construct them later, or never construct them, rather than
Yeah.
construct them and not need them.
And I think that's the way to go. I don't want to take them out completely because, if a user comes in that requires significant parking, then we'd have to come back and amend the whole application. And then that's an expense and a burden that I don't want my client to
I
have.
would bank as much as you feel you want to bank. The other question I have is, so what's the treatment of the western driveway? Are you advocating for full movement? You keep it as shown on the site plan, or what? I mean, we need a final decision.
I would like to at least have the opportunity to open the site and have it operate that way. I don't believe that the volumes coming out of the driveway opposite the street are going to cause a problem. And as long as the sight lines are maintained and there's no change to the characteristic of Old New Brunswick Road, and actually if we add another crosswalk, that's another visual feature that would cue the motoring public as to the activity. I know it's partially a public right-of-way and partially a driveway, but it's essentially functioning as an access drive for these various properties.
So, just so I'm directionally challenged here, so the western driveway is the one closer to the ShopRite?
That is correct.
Okay, and that's currently proposed to be no left out of that.
Well, I think they did that on the plan revision because I had said in my report that it may need to be evaluated for that prohibition.
Yeah, because if you look at the colorized rendering, there's like a big old tree on the more eastern driveway. I thought maybe that was your no left out, but,
I think the way the site lays out with the full circulation and parking around the building, these driveways lend themselves to distributing the traffic where they want to go. For that reason, I think it's best to let it start at least with the left turn permitted out of both driveways, because I don't see the lefts out of the driveway on the other side of the street increasing unless there was some sudden change for more retail and without the Harris
yeah, I mean, the
use
only
there.
thing I'd be worried about is, are you going to have enough room when you make a left out of that driveway, to insert yourself into traffic, given the traffic coming towards Old New Brunswick Road from the plaza right next door?
And again, that would be, all of that's factored in, and the volumes along Old New Brunswick can still process those lefts. So if they're spread out over 2 driveways, you reduce the delay for anybody leaving the property. And the only obstacle, I would say, is somebody exiting left from the driveway across the street. So if that person gets to the intersection first, they're going to turn left first. If someone from our site gets to that offset intersection first, they'll make the left first.
What's the board's feelings on this? Any strong feeling one way or the other?
Oh, I think having full range of movement's fine. I don't think there's enough traffic.
No, I'm just glad to hear her say that even if it's partly a public street, it's functioning as a driveway. And it pays to try and slow people down a little bit.
You didn't know you were a traffic engineer now, Bob, did you?
Once in a while, I agree with one.
I'm glad it's me.
Okay.
I have no further questions of Ms. Dolan.
Any other board members have any questions for Ms. Dolan? No. Carl?
As part of the previous application, when this property was a charter school, the reason for the widening down at Old New Brunswick Road and New Brunswick Road was to add a left turn lane, as well as have a right turn lane for vehicles going southbound away from the shopping center. Is that needed now?
On Old New Brunswick Road,
Correct.
no, because the distribution is clearly heavily left and can be accommodated in that lane. The number of rights out of there, I think, was somewhere maxing out at 12. It goes from like 4 to 12 in an hour.
Compared to 200
It's a yeah, exactly. It's not needed.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I think we should make a motion to open to the public.
I move to open to the public at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone wishing to speak, come to the podium, give your name, give your address, and get sworn in before you offer testimony.
Let's swear him in first.
Yes, and that's not going to be on.
Pete will turn it on
Pete's
for
our
you.
sound man.
There's nothing he can't do.
Shouldn't really be a surprise that more people
I don't
turn
think
left that fast.
that pays.
If you're going down that driveway, you're going out. If you're going the other way, you go out the other way.
That's why I said they worked it out. I didn't want to spend it.
It's only logic.
See, if you could raise your right hand for me? Do you
Oh,
swear?
you want my name first?
I'd rather have you sworn in first.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, you give us an assumed name and it screws everything up. So, do you swear the testimony you're going to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
If you could state your name, spell your last name, and give us your address.
It's Stephen Levine, Levine, 171 Stone Manor Drive. The two questions that I was prepared to ask have kind of been covered, which have to do with since the retail stores are different from a charter school, whether the intersection that was just mentioned between Old New Brunswick Road and New Brunswick Road needs to have a somewhat different design than what it has now. The second thing I was going to ask, which is really not a question for the applicant, but as Michael said, I have a feeling at some point there needs to be a traffic light at that T intersection. And at the time when there's a traffic light, then they can cut a hole in the fence on the other side of the street and put a walkway in across New Brunswick Road, which is part of the traffic light with the walk and the unwalk thing. But that's all been covered. One thing which I didn't find when I was looking at the plans, the most important thing, I guess, for the Somerset Run people, since this place is close to Somerset Run and in the retail district overlay zone, what time do the lights go on in the morning and what time do the lights go off at night? Is that in the plans that were filed? I don't remember reading.
It was in the old approval, I read that, so.
It was in the old approval.
And it's also noted on the plans.
What are the times?
I think
Because I know the people in Building 1 in Somerset Run are going to be very interested in that as they were in the times for the lights of the CVS and the Rite Aid and whatever.
on the plans, note 29,
Start at 28.
28, deliveries, garbage, and recycling and pickups shall be scheduled after 7 a.m., which was part of the original conditions. Store hours shall be from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., except for restaurants with liquor licenses, which shall be in accordance with the township's alcoholic beverage regulations. And lighting shall be turned on the building facade and pylon signs go off half hour after the close. And lightings around the safety, the perimeter lighting for the building for security reasons can stay on for 24 hours. I'd like to make a suggestion based on some issues that we had. Instead of a half hour after close, to make it an hour after close. And the reason is the experience that we had with another shopping center where the stores may close at 10 o'clock, but there's still employees in the store cleaning, working, that may be there longer than a half hour, and that creates a problem. So I would rather change it to an hour, because we did experience problems with another project. So I think it should be an hour.
When is the latest close?
11, it shall be after the close of the last business. So if all the stores are down at 10 p.m., it would be 11 p.m. So whatever the last store closes, it would be an hour later.
But is there a maximum time that, in other words, when does the last store close? Is that 10?
The maximum is 11.
So in other words, the lights could stay on till midnight?
Correct. Now, your township doesn't have any ordinance or these were agreed to voluntarily by the applicant
Yeah,
8 years ago.
I remember that.
Yeah,
Remember?
and, I mean, theoretically, not that the applicant, remember, the applicant doesn't want to keep the lights on any longer than he has to because that's an unnecessary expense. It also is clear that if there's a restaurant there with a liquor license, some of the lights may stay on even longer because restaurants can stay open with liquor licenses till 2 a.m. I don't know whether there'll be one there, but they obviously have the right to stay open that late. All I'm suggesting is that whenever the stores close, whatever that time that is, that it be 1 hour after stores close rather than a half hour.
And there's no spillage of light off the premises?
And actually, if you heard the engineer testify, there is even a change in that we're going to have LED lights as opposed to what were the original lights 7 or 8 years ago, which again controls light spillage. They can also be dimmed if that is appropriate.
So I guess what I need to tell the Somerset Run residents is
Well, yeah, I think
that there will be no problem because there are Somerset Run residents in buildings 1 and 2 that are very sensitive to what has gone on in CVS and Rite Aid.
Well, I think in summary, what the applicant has proposed by virtue of these notes is they've, with the one suggested or requested change by Mr. Lanford, the conditions that were imposed on the original Ambani application, closing the store hours, the lights, et cetera, are incorporated in this exactly the same as it was 8 years ago. Mr. Lanford has suggested a slight tweak to that to allow the lights to remain on 1 hour instead of just a half hour because of the realistic, sometimes employees can't get out that quick.
It'll take me 100 hours to dig through my papers to find out what it is I said back in 2008 about the lights.
It's right on the plan. It's notes
Okay.
28 through 31 on the first sheet, so
Okay.
it's right there.
As a matter of fact, we have here copies of the earlier approval, and your testimony there is included in it.
Yeah, that's what I said. So I can't find it, but you have it in front of you. Good. All right, thank you. I guess the other thing to say, and this was also discussed here, a sidewalk on New Brunswick Road on the back part of this property, of course, there's no sidewalk on the Magyar Bank property or anything. That's for something that might happen in the future. But if there were a sidewalk on the back part of this property, and if this applicant would be willing to pay Somerset Run, because I believe Somerset Run owns the piece of property that's on New Brunswick Road going up to the corner of Elizabeth Avenue, if this applicant would be willing to pay X thousand dollars, maybe Somerset Run would put put a sidewalk there, and then the Somerset Run people could cross at the light on Elizabeth Avenue and New Brunswick Road, walk down the sidewalk, and come into the back part of this property. Now, you know, I don't know whether that's the kind of a thing that you ought to hold up granting approval to these people, but it might be something to think about for the future. The other thing about crossing Old New Brunswick Road, isn't there a provision to put a crosswalk with one of those signs that say pedestrians have the right of way, and if there's a pedestrian that crosses in this crosswalk, even if it's not at a traffic light, you're supposed to stop your car?
Yeah, and that's why the possibility of having a crosswalk on Old New Brunswick Road will explore, because the speeds are lower. Doing a situation like that on New Brunswick Road is probably not, you know, the right way, but we're going to explore it on Old New Brunswick Road.
What is the speed limit on Old New Brunswick Road?
I assume it's 25.
It's considered a local road, 25.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to cross New Brunswick Road. I mean, it's just what Bob Medler said. I mean,
Yes,
it's not-
yes, that's right.
That's why I say eventually when it is signalized, then you can put all that in. But I was trying to get something that you could use prior to that happening.
By the way, my memory serves me that Old New Brunswick Road is not a through street. You are not allowed to go on New Brunswick Road and drive on Old Brunswick Road and go to Elizabeth Avenue and do something. You're only allowed to go on Old New Brunswick Road if you're going to stop at the nursing home or Hares or one of the or the new place or one of the stores that's already there. It's not a through street. You could check that and see.
Judging by Ms. Dolan's figures, I don't think that's enforced.
It's not enforced, but as the attorney just informed me, it is true because we vacated that portion of the street.
Well, it may be true, I said. I mean, depending on what happened when you vacated and what, I mean.
The conditions were.
Yeah, the conditions of the vacation.
I will admit I don't have direct knowledge of that. I was not around for.
I don't know what the conditions were, but you may well be right.
But it's used as a through street
Yeah.
all the time.
Well, there's no.
But
signage.
it's not supposed to be.
Isn't there a raised brick
Yeah.
crossing in there?
Yeah, there's a speed
that's
bump.
supposed to
there's a speed-
deter
yeah.
traffic.
But my car has
Table
good enough
close to
springs that at 15 miles an hour, I can ignore it. So, you know, if you're willing to go 15 miles an hour, you can use it as a through street.
You're right.
Ah,
I
you
sat
tested it.
I sat through all 4 hearings. It's
Yep.
not supposed to be a through street,
Yeah.
period.
This place is for retail stores. A retail store could have a store, could have a restaurant, could have doctor's offices. So as the attorney said with the liquor license and all that, if you have a restaurant, I believe you're going to have a bathroom because I believe that's required. So there was some discussion. There better be some way to put a bathroom in without, using dynamite to get through the floor in the building. The original architect at one point said 9 tenants, but then he mentioned tenant J. If you count up, I think J is actually the 10th letter. I think the plans showed 10 retail locations. Isn't that right? Although the 2008 applicant had only 8 in the same space.
Just like any retail space, it could change over time. I mean, the square footage is the same. The square footage is the square footage. I mean, this could be split up into 5 tenants, or they could have 12, depending on the size of the tenants that they get. But it's still going to be that design, that size.
And the park, just for the record, the parking is based on the square footage of the
Parking is
building.
based on the total square footage. So J could end up being J1 and J2. I mean, you could have many, any number of tenants from 5 to 15.
I guess as a final comment, notwithstanding anything that I said up here in the last bunch of minutes, I don't see any reason why the planning board should not approve this application.
Thank you, Mr. Levy.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to come forward? Seeing no other members, I move that we close it to the public at this time.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Peter, summation?
I don't think so. I would just,
I always give you the opportunity to have a laugh.
I was chastised the last time when I wanted to summarize an application that was previously heard and approved, so.
Yeah.
I don't want to get chastised again.
Who did
I would just respectfully request the site plan be granted with the variances that we're requesting, and we will make all the modifications to the plan as agreed upon this evening.
I make a motion to grant that.
Can we,
And this is including holding off on cutting some of those trees.
We will agree not to cut down the 2 trees that are in the side triangle and try to preserve the other 3 trees on the other side.
We'll consult with the engineer and the traffic officer.
Right.
Yeah,
concerning the site
everything we agreed to during the course of the discussion. Our attorney informs me that we do need to stipulate the close time for the lights. Is it going to be 1 hour after the last closing?
I can see a need for that, for safety purposes for the employees. Yes.
Okay, so we'll include that in the motion along with everything else.
Did we have a second to that motion? I don't know.
I'll second it.
Councilman Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Hauk?
Yes, as long as Old New Brunswick Road gets paved.
Ms. McGuire?
Yes.
Mr. Mettler?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Ragnow?
Yes.
Chairman Orsini?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Don't run away yet.
Don't run away.
Vince, anything administrative we have for next time?
Hey, Vince?
No,
Anything, we are having our next meeting, anything?
we are having our next meeting in 2 weeks, yes.
Just to let our new member or members know, they may not have told you this when they signed you up, but there is this planning board course, if you have this copy of the planner. I don't think it costs nothing. I think you do, Vince will help you sign up, right?
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked before.
'Cause there's
I'm
a
going to email
Somerset
it to
one,
her, and
there's
she's
one-
going to figure out which one she wants.
I remember having to figure out where Middlesex Fire Academy is, but you can do closer ones these days, so.
Wonderful.
There's one in Hillsborough.
Yep.
Even better.
Perfect.
Later, but
If there's nothing else, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night,
You
everyone.
realize this whole corner